Business process management initiatives such as process mapping are a critical part of any digital transformation or ERP implementation project. I'm Brian Lockeruba, Manager of Transformation and Strategy at Third Stage Consulting. I'm here with Adam Cheatham, Director of Strategy and Transformation at Third Stage as well. Today, we're going to be cracking the code on business process management.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I think the first best place to start is going to be at the beginning. What in the world is business process management?
Business process management can include a number of different areas, but ultimately it's about making sure that you are identifying what's happening within your processes, what the areas of pain are, what are the opportunities for improvement. So it can involve mapping what your current state is, identifying areas for improvement, and then mapping what those should look like in your future state.
And how do I know what future state's supposed to be? How do I get to that? I mean, I know what I do today, but...
So this involves a joint effort where you want to pull together members of your team across different functions, have them in a session led by an experienced facilitator such as those at Third Stage Consulting who can help guide them towards really laying out what those steps are and then being able to ask the questions around what are the ways that they can improve those processes and gear them towards best practices that may exist in other organizations, as well as pulling out those ideas that may exist or just have to be asked in a way that those people can come to on their own.
Mm-hmm. And can I start with best practices that exist in other organizations and just do that?
That is one approach that can be taken towards it, but that's one that comes with some risk. So identifying what the proper approach is really depends on knowing your organization and knowing what you need to look for. If you start with the best practices in other organizations, you could be leaving out those things that make you different and unique and missing out on the competitive advantage of your own organization. So if you're going to go that route, it's got to be something you've got a strategic commitment to as an organization that you're looking to maybe copy other organizations in certain processes. But you'll want to make sure you know what ones are most critical to you and you're keeping those unique to what you need.
And what if everything about my business is unique? You know, I'm different than everybody. You know, we do things our own way and we have a particular type of culture that means that my process is created the way that it is because it is unique. How do you guys approach that type of thing?
So if that's really the case, then what we would do is we would start from that point of work with understanding what you are and what makes you special, and then try to build upon that and work within the people that you have on your team who have the expertise around those processes and what separates you from your competitors, and to be able to work through how to improve within the context of those unique processes of yours. But I will say, you know, we work with a lot of organizations. Everyone thinks they're unique. Everyone generally is in some areas, but there are a lot of ways in which by talking to independent experts who have worked across a number of different businesses, you may find areas of commonality that you didn't know were there.
Okay. And how would you suggest that a business figures out what areas it is unique in that matter and which areas it is unique in that don't?
It can often start with a strategic discussion with your leaders to understand really where you fit in the marketplace that you're in, what your competitors are doing, and what you've been hearing from your customers. The customer part is really a critical aspect of this, trying to understand when your customers seek you out, why are they doing it, why do they stay with you, and that really helps give good guidance as to what it is that makes you special. And the things that aren't noticeable to your customers, it's possible those are differentiators for you, but it's more likely those are things that you may have adapted over the years to the circumstance of your organization, but may have some potential to change.
Okay, and from a perspective of business process management, it sounds like there's a bit of this that involves process changes. How do I understand where to start with that, and what are some of the tools that you use to figure out where I am today as a business and what my processes could be in the future?
So we'll want to start, we can get an initiative like this up and going pretty quickly by just first getting an overview of what you do as an organization, and then we really get into workshops, pulling together these cross-functional teams to work through those processes and guided by the facilitation of someone who has experience in this and knows how to kind of get to the point of what's critical of your processes to work through mapping those out, documenting what that current state is by just asking steps, what are the steps in the process, and really facilitating out of people what are the pain points and challenges that they field, that's how we really get to understanding and making recommendations on what the future state should look like.
And how important is that process map?
That can vary, it depends on the organization. It is good to have a map of some level of detail that you have as a baseline to follow and have a reference for people to track. Certain organizations, certain processes may need to go a lot deeper into the depth of what those steps are, how we should map out that process. Other organizations may find that it's enough to have just this structure to be able to guide the conversation, have people on the same page by knowing what steps are happening and who's doing them.
And once I have this process mapping, I've gone through this process mapping exercise, what kind of outcomes should I expect from this type of business process management activity?
You're going to find a few potential ones that may come up. One of them is identifying opportunities for improvement that they may just be ways to change the way you're doing business. It may be shifting the way you're communicating or the way certain teams are structured. It may be finding technology opportunities that could be done with your existing technology or could be done with the new technologies you may be looking to implement. It might be that you're in the midst of a transformation initiative or in the early stages of it, and that you have a technology direction that you're working towards, and you find that you're assessing that direction. You might validate that, you're on the right track, or maybe that there are some shifts in how you need to think about it. Maybe one process that you thought was most critical is not actually as important as certain other processes, and you need to rethink your focus on how you're evaluating and differentiating between technologies.
Okay, and so now I go through this process management activity. I have a bunch of process maps, and I have a new process that I'm going to suggest to my colleagues that we're going to use. What do I do when my colleague says that doesn't work for me?
Part of this is something you can head off up front by getting the right engagement from people in the first place. We find that if you bring in the people who are doing the processes cross-functionally and engage them in that, then you start to build some consensus from that. But that doesn't eliminate the problem of having some resistance from it at levels, whether at the levels of people doing the work or at the management levels. So one of the ways you can address that is through building a business case around that, being able to track some data around what is this going to mean for your organization? How are you going to identify the specific benefits you'll achieve from this, be able to quantify them if they're quantifiable. In some cases, they may be areas you have to link them more to strategy and growth opportunities and ways the business is looking to change over time, but being able to really tie it to what are the goals of the business.
And the idea behind the business case, it's easy to see, a lot of times how some changes can affect positive impacts upstream and downstream. When we have types of folks that would be maybe not necessarily bought into the positive side of the change, and more the resistance, or a bit more resistant to that change for more personal reasons. Do you have any thoughts on how a company might approach that?
Sure. This gets into the topic of organizational change management, which is tightly linked with process management. So change management, is about helping your people to adapt to the things that are going to be different in the future state you are trying to achieve. So there's a lot of tactics around that beyond common ones people think of are communication and training, but it's also about analyzing what those impacts are. As you go through and define a future state process, you'll want to track to what is that going to look like for people, and really get ahead of how the changes in their job are going to impact the way that they work, and start to deal with those up front and develop a plan for it from day one, as opposed to waiting until the day you go live with changes and then finding people don't know how to do their jobs.
This all sounds like quite a lot of work for what may turn out to be minimal benefit and significant resistance. What is it in your experience that I might be getting out of this type of an opportunity?
Yeah, it depends for the organization too, what kind of effort you put into it. There are organizations that have been committed over the years to extensive Six Sigma teams and organizations that will really build out, General Electric is an example of how they had teams of people doing process mapping and data analysis over the years for this type of initiative. And for some companies that makes sense. For others, it's not the way to go. And you can do this with an amount of effort that's scaled to what you need, and be able to do some workshops. You can get workshops knocked out in a week to be able to get an initial baseline of what you're trying to do, and to be able to really set some direction on how you want to go forward with that initiative, and size it from there. If you find the benefits are going to be pretty extensive, to robust process control, you may end up putting some more time and energy into that your business case will be able to show you will pay off. And in other cases, it may be more of a means to identify some opportunities and develop a strategy around those, so you don't have to make this an extensive organization-wide long-term effort.
And we talked a little bit about the technology side of enabling business process management. Why wouldn't I just buy a new technology and use that technology's processes to enforce changes? Are these things that I should be doing before I bring new technology in, or should I wait until the new technology shows up and then change my processes?
Doing it beforehand is definitely the way to go here. You need to make sure that your business is driving these changes. If you follow along with what the technology is doing without at least having put the thought into, is this serving our business and what we need to be doing, you can end up making things worse than what they were before. With any technology change, the technology alone, it's still being operated on by people. People are still doing the work, and if that technology is not aligned with the way that people are trying to serve your customers, then you're just going to end up making things worse than what they were before, even if that technology is much more advanced than what you have today.
So when we're talking about a technology change and changing business processes up front, or after, or with technology, we talk a lot about ERP and what that means to your business. What's the relationship between ERP and business process management, and how do I make sure that I'm managing both those complicated conversations effectively?
Sure. So business process management inherently does not have to have anything to do with ERP. It's a discipline that's a good thing to be as an organization, to be aware of and in control of your processes and to be managing those. So definitely don't think this is something that is only tied to the technology. That said, it takes on an even greater importance at the beginning of a major technology initiative, because you end up raising the stakes of how you can get yourself into more trouble with technology if you are going ahead and not looking at your processes and letting them drive your business and trying to go down the path of having a technology change the way that you work.
Well, and speaking of things that can drive how your processes work, in today's current environment with with COVID-19, what are some of your tips that you can offer people for managing their processes through a changing environment like that?
Yes, well, what we've seen is that there have been changes to processes that have been kind of enforced upon people in ways that they hadn't desired. Some things have been very paper-oriented processes that have moved towards going online just because people were not in a location to be able to do that. So the idea, what we have seen a lot is that you have this opportunity now, and we do look, obviously it's had a negative impact on a lot of businesses, others had a very positive impact, but in either case it's an opportunity to take a look at changing scenarios, what things may look like for you in the future and what they're looking like now, and having drawn out some things that may have looked like they were running better than they are, and it's been exposed through the experience of more remote work or disruptions to supply chain or things of that nature. So the disruptions we've seen from COVID-19 are ones that speak even more towards getting a handle on your processes and making them robust enough and controlled enough to be able to adapt when changes arise and not have to start from the beginning.
So talk about adaptability and control over your business processes, and one thing that comes to mind is that making one change one time. How do you reconcile the concept that I want to do this one time, and I want to change my business processes, and I want to be done? How do you reconcile that with the concept that the environment will always be changing in which you do business, and keeping up with that and keeping your business processes up to date?
Yeah, the idea is that change is around you, it's going to happen. So it's whether you're letting it control you or whether you're being able to respond to it and control how you're going to react. So by being on top of your processes, knowing what they are, continually reevaluating them, you're enabling yourself to be able to respond to changes more quickly and to do them in a way that is not completely reactive. And it's not to say you're going to be ahead of every challenge. I think no matter any organization, even if they were well ahead of the curve on processes when COVID-19 struck, was doing some scrambling and hadn't prepared everything in the process for exactly that situation. I don't want to pretend it's a be-all, end-all for that, but it is a way to be more ahead of things and to be able to respond more quickly and nimbly.
So there's a sense of this business process management that involves a bit of continuous improvement then?
Absolutely, yes. You having developing a discipline around this that you can maintain over the course of time and be able to, and again, it scales differently for different organizations. So for some, it may be a very rigorous check-in, say every 6 months or so, and redoing the maps and taking a look at processes again. And others, it may be managing some metrics that you're able to track to, and hopefully that you have a system that can help support that, or capabilities to track various data points around your processes, or there are other ways to be able to be on top of that. But you need to find the way that's right for you to be able to stay on top of that, and that's where we can help. We've at Third Stage have been a part of many of these initiatives in all kinds of different organizations, and can help you to identify what's the right sizing for you to move forward. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you to Adam for being a part of this. We'd like you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we have all kinds of great content around process initiatives and digital transformations. And also, please feel free to reach out to me directly with any additional questions you have on this topic.